I want to talk about some specific security risks, but before I do that, general question, are the biggest risks to our public security more overseas, in places like Iraq and Afghanistan and how well we do there? Or do we have a serious continuing domestic threat of terrorism? Where do you see the real risk in security terms?
Can't really quantify the domestic risk around terrorism. I mean, we know it's there, it's ever present, very difficult to hedge. It's certainly a risk to the extent that the United States, to alleviate it, needs to continue to spend a lot of money on homeland security, on immigration policies, on policies of inspections of cargo and the rest that actually reduce American competitiveness on the economic front vis-a-vis other countries. That's from an economic perspective, that's actually the bigger risk than the risk of one-off terrorist events. But you have to balance these things, and every administration would. The biggest risks from let's look at 2009,
right.
And what we're all going to be worried about in terms of the headlines, clearly are international risks.
Right. Well, let's start with Iraq. What do you see for Iraq in terms of the imperative to withdraw and the stated objective to withdraw, but also the need to maintain stability there?
There's no question that the United States, through its troop surge over the course of the last 18 months, has built up a certain level of political capital, improving the security situation on the ground, vis-a-vis American soldiers, vis-a-vis Iraqi soldiers, and vis-a-vis the Iraqi population as a whole. They've also worked in building infrastructure, and I think that's made a difference in the hearts and minds of the Iraqi people, to the extent that in Al-Anbar province you no longer see domestic support for al-Qaeda in Iraq. I think that even with a drawdown, if it's limited and if the Obama administration is seen to be listening to the American generals, to folks like David Petraeus, then I expect that Iraq will not be one of the largest risks this year. Long term, of course, the dangers of fragmentation continue to be significant. The fact is that we've moved in a situation in Iraq from hard, as Petraeus would say, from hard and hopeless to hard and hopeful. And the commonality there is hard. Right. So you can't cut that off in the near term.
And are we right to think about Iraq and Afghanistan in a single phrase, or are they just completely different and need to be handled separately and differently in terms of the way we think about our commitments overseas and our security?
We're right to talk about them in a single phrase because we're funding them out of a single budget, and because we have only so much capacity to pay attention to these threats. So if everything is not the highest priority, and we have to make some hard choices. If you've got Congress really concerned about expenditure, if you've got an American president that's going to be much more focused by necessity on domestic issues, then how much attention can you pay? How many days can you spend abroad? Where can you send your Secretary of State? Where can your top envoys be? Clearly, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and even India, in terms of this sort of danger of radicalism and violence in South Asia, is growing. And I think the question will be to what extent Obama decides that it's a troop surge strategy in Afghanistan, Pakistan, as opposed to we need to change our political orientation.
Right. I think on any analysis, the tensions between India and Pakistan would be of great concern. Where do you put that on your scale in terms of threats?
Lower.
And risks?
Lower. And that's one of the good stories that's come out. The Indian government recognizes they have a lot to lose economically by going after Pakistan for the difficulties that they've experienced with these horrific bombings in Mumbai. The Pakistani government is under a lot of pressure. The U.S. and the Brits have been on the ground in India. They've been gathering evidence. They've been providing it to the Pakistani government. Very hard if you are Mr. Zardari right now, if you're Mr. Kiani right now, to say, sorry, we're not going to cooperate. We're not going to crack down locally on these militant groups. And I think that's going to create a level of mutual understanding, if not quite trust, that should keep those tensions on an even keel.
Coming back to the United States for one last question, do you think that we're going to see a sort of a demilitarization of American foreign policy? In other words, after our experience in Iraq, and now we're deeply involved in Afghanistan, but as a general trend, do you think there'll be a a movement away from the use of military force, or not necessarily?
Short of the Israelis engaging in military strikes against Iran, which would certainly have the danger of bringing the United States in, I don't expect that the U.S. is going to be engaging in any direct warfighting over the course of 2009. But pirates.
Right.
Who's stopping these guys? America has the Blue Water Navy. As you respond to greater threats from rogue organizations and individuals, NATO's there, the U.S. is there. I think it's hard to imagine that U.S. foreign policy will be demilitarized in an environment where rogue organizations and individuals are becoming increasingly present and increasingly dangerous.